Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. My name is Muhamamad Bahri with my two partners here, Saiful Huda and Taufiq Athallah Rifqi. In this opportunity, we would like to share some materials about measurement scales in research methodology. This is our outline presentation, including first, the definition of measurement scale, second, types of measurement scale, third, important scaling techniques, including rating and ranking scales, and fourth, goodness of measures, including validity and reliability. And now, we will talk about measurement. The definition of measurement is a process of mapping aspect of a domain onto other aspect of a range according to some rule of correspondence, according to Kothari 2004. Measurement is the assignment of numbers or other symbols to characteristics or attributes of objects according to a specified set of rules, according to Sekaran and Bogi 2016. Measurement means gathering data in the form of numbers. To be able to assign numbers to attributes of objects, we need a scale. A scale is a tool or mechanism by which individuals are distinguished as to how they differ from one another on the variables of interest to our study. Scaling involves the creation of a continuum on which our objects are located. And there are four types of scales generally. The first one is nominal scale. Nominal scale is one that allows the researcher to assign subjects to certain categories or groups. This scale is simply a system of assigning number symbols to events in order to label them, and numbers serve as nothing more than labels. A variable measured on a nominal scale may have one, two, or more subcategories depending upon the extent of variations. For example, water and taxi have only one subgroup, where the variable gender can be classified into two subcategories, male and female. The second is ordinal scale. Ordinal scale is such numbers are used to designate an ordering along some dimensions such as from less to more, from small to large, from sooner to later. Ordinal scales only permit the ranking of items from highest to lowest. Ordinal measures have no absolute values, and the real differences between adjacent ranks may be not equal. Thus, the use of an ordinal scale implies the statement of greater than or less than. An equality statement is also acceptable, without our being able to state how much greater or less. Next. Saiful.
Okay, thank you for the occasion, Syamsul. Okay, I will continue about the types of scale. The third type is interval scale. In an interval scale or equal interval scale, numerically equal distance on the scale represent equal values in the characteristics being measured. An interval scale uses a unit of measurement that enables the individual or responses to be placed at equally spaced interval in relation to the spread of the variable. Interval scale can have an arbitrary zero, but it's not possible to determine for them what may be called an absolute zero or the unique origin. The Fahrenheit scale is an example of an interval scale and shows similarities in what one can and cannot do with it. One can say that an increase in temperature from 30 to 40 involves the same increase in temperature as an increase from 60 to 70, but one cannot say that the temperature of 60 is twice as warm as the temperature of 30, because both numbers are dependent on the fact that the zero on the scale is set arbitrarily and the temperature of the freezing point of water. The ratio of the two temperatures, 30 and 60, means nothing because zero is an arbitrary point. Temperature of the freezing point of water. The ratio of the two temperatures, 30 and 60, means nothing because 0 is an arbitrary point. Next slide. Now is 4 types of scale. Ratio scale. The ratio scale is not only measures that magnitude of the difference between point on the scale, but also that the proportion in the difference. Says ratio scale have an absolute or true zero of measurements. The difference between the interval is always measured from a 0 point. The measurement of income, age, height, and weight are example of this scale. A person who is 40 years of age is twice as old as 20 years old. A person earning $60,000 per year earns 3 times the salary of a person earning $20,000. Next slide. Now is summary of scale. In the nominal, highlight the differences by classifying objects or persons into groups and provide the least amount of information on the variable. If ordinal, provide some additional information by rank ordering the categories of the nominal scale. An interval is not only rank, but also provide us with information on the magnitude of the difference in the variable. And if it's a ratio, indicate not only the magnitude of the difference, but also their proportion. Multiplication or division will preserve this ratio. Next slide.
Okay, so we move to important scaling technique. Next. The first is rating scale. The rating scale involves qualitative description of a limited number of aspects of a thing or of strain of a person. When we using rating scale or categorical scale, we judge an object in absolute terms against some specified criteria. In example, we judge property of object without reference to other similar objects. Pendek 2015. Rating scale are used to measure most behavior concept. This rating may be in such form as like, dislike, above average, average, below average, or other classification with more categories such as like, very much, like, somewhat, neutral, dislike, somewhat, dislike, very much, and excellent, good, average, below average, and poor, and always, often, occasionally, rarely, never, and so on. So the following rating scale are often used in this research. The first is dichotomous scale and second category scale, semantic differential scale, numerical scale, itemized rating scale, Likert scale, fixed or constant sum rating scale, Saiful scale, graphic rating scale, and the last is consequence scale. Next. Okay, first is dichotomous scale. The dichotomous scale is used to elicit a yes or no answer, as in the example below. That note that nominal scale is used to elicit the response. So this is the example, like do you want own the car, yes or no? And the B is category scale. The category scale use multiply item to elicit a single response. As the following example in the side, this also use the nominal scale. So this is the example, then the question and the answer. Okay, next. Okay, for the C is semantic differential scale. Is used to assess respondent attitude toward a particular brand, advertisement, object, or individual. The responses can be plotted to obtain a good idea of their perception. A semantic differential scale is the ordinal in nature. However, is it often treated as an interval scale? An example of the semantic differential scale follow. So this the example is the responses to unresponsive, beautiful to ugly, and the courageous to timid. Next. Next. Okay. Uh, before slide. Yeah. So D is numerical scale. Is similar to the semantic differential scale, with the difference that number on a 5-point or 7-point scale are provided with bipolar adjective at both ends. And illustrated below, this scale is also often treated as an interval scale, although it is formally ordinal in nature. So this is the example and the question: how pleased are you with the new essay again? Okay.
Next. Okay. So the last is next is E, itemized rating scale. A 5-point or 7-point scale with anchor as needed is provided for each item, and the respondent state the appropriate number on the side of each item, or cycle the relevant number against each item. As per the example that follow, the responses to the item are the sum. This shows an interval scale. So this is the example. Is classified as the first is very unlikely until 5 very likely, and the next is a balance rating scale with the interest. So the first is not at all interest until the very much interested. Okay.
Okay, the next is Likert scale. The Likert scale is designed to examine how strongly subjects agree or disagree with statement on a 5-point scale with the following anchor. First, there's a strongly disagree from 1. Second is disagree is for 2. Neither agree nor disagree or neutral is for 3. Agree is for 4. And strongly agree is for 5. For example, using the predicting Likert scale, set the extent to which you agree with the following statements. From 1 to 5, we can make a statement. We are either strongly disagree until we are strongly agree. And the next is fixed or constant sum scale. The respondents are here asked to distribute a given number of points across various items as per example below. This is more in the nature of an ordinal scale. So this is the example. The example is we have to make a point from each scale until the total point is 100. For example, if we put fragrance 10, color 12, 20, set 30, and so on, the total point should reach 100. The next is staple scale. The scale is simultaneously measures both the direction and intensity of attitude toward the items under study. The characteristic of interest to the study is placed at center with a numerical scale ranging, say, from +3 to -3 on either side of the item, as illustrated in the example below. This gives an idea of how close or distant the individual response to the stimulus is. Since this doesn't have an absolute 0 point, it is an interval scale. So this is the example. And last is graphic rating scale. Graphic rating scale helps the respondent to indicate on the scale their answer to a particular question by placing a mark at the appropriate point on the line as in the following example. This is an ordinal scale, though the example might make it look an interval scale. So this is the example. We can see that on a scale 1 to 10, how would you rate your supervisor? So 1 for very bad, 5 for the middle or adequate, and 10 for excellent.
Okay, now we talk about ranking scale. Ranking scale are used to make comparison or rank the variables that have been typed on a numeric scale. Under ranking scale or comparative scale, we make relative judgments against other similar objects. The respondent under this method directly compare two or more objects and make choice among them. There are two generally used approaches of ranking scale. The first is varied comparison. The varied comparison scale is used when, among a small number of objects, respondents are asked to choose between two objects at a time. This helps to assess preference. For instance, during the pilot comparison, respondents consistently show a preference for product 1 over product 2, 3, and 4. The manager can reliably understand which product line demand his utmost attention. However, as the number of objects to be compared increases, so does the number of pilot comparison. The number of pilot choice for an object will be n and 1 and divide by 2. The greater the number of objects or stimuli, the greater the number of fired comparison present to the respondent, and the greater the respondent fatigue. Hence, fired comparison is a good method if the number of stimuli present is small. Next slide. And second ranking scale is forced choice. The forced choice enables the responder to rank objects relative to one another among the alternative provided. This is easier for the respondent, particularly if the number of choices to be ranked is limited in number. And the third is comparative scale. The comparative scale provides a benchmark or a point of reference to assess attitude toward the current object, event, or situation under study. An example of the use of the comparative scale follows that and below. Next slide. The guidance of measures. The scale developed can often be imperfect, and errors are prone to occur the measurement of attitudinal variables. The use of better instrument will ensure more accuracy in results, which in turn will enhance the scientific quality of the research. And in some way, we need to assess the goodness of the measure developed. That is, we need to be reasonably sure that the instrument we use in our research do indeed measure that variable they are supposed to, and that they measure them accurately. First is validity. Validity is a test of how well an instrument that is developed measure that particular concept it is intended to measure. In other words, validity is concerned with whether we measure the right concept. There are several types of validity tests are used to test the goodness of measures, namely, its content validity, creation-related validity, and construct validity. Next slide.
Okay, for the validity is divided as two. The first is types of validity. Is divided as three. The first is content validity. Is a content validity insert that the measure include an adequate and representative set of items that type the concept. The more of scale item represent that type the concept. The more the scale item represent the domain or universe of the concept being measured, the greater the concept validity. To put it differently, content validity is a function of how well the dimension and element of a concept have been delineated. And second is preparation-related validity is related to our ability to predict some outcome or estimate the existence of some current condition. This form of validity reflects the success of measure used for some empirical estimating purpose. And the last is construct validity. Uh, this tells how well the result obtained from the use of the measure fit the theory around which the test is designed. In fact, criterion-related validity is a broad term that actually refers to. The first is predictive validity, and second is concurrent validity. And the consequent validity is established when the scale discriminate individuals who are known to be different. That is, they should score differency of the instrument. And the last is predict validity, the usefulness of the test in predicting some future performance. Okay, next slide. And for the types of the validity too is divided as 6. And the first is content validity, that the description is does the measure adequately measure the concept. Second, phase validity, the expert validate the instrument measure that its name suggests in measure. And criteria related validity, does the measure differentiate in the manner that help to predict a criteria variable. Consequent validity is does the measure differentiate in a manner that help to predict a criterion variable currently. And predictive validity, does the measure differentiate individual in a manner that help predict in the future criterion. And the last is contract validity. Does the instrument have the concept as theorized? Next. Okay, and the second is reliability. A measuring instrument is reliable if it provides a consistent result. The reliability of a measure indicates the extent to which it is without bias or error-free, and hence insert consistent measure across time and across the various items in the instrument. In other words, the reliability of a measure is an indication of the stability and consistency with which the instrument measure the concept and help to assess the goodness of the measure.
Okay, thank you for your great attention. Hopefully this video will be beneficial for you.